So, Steve, you recently got a chance to play a bunch of games at Summer Games Fest, and a lot of stuff on Switch too as well. So I want to hear about all these things you got to play, and I'm really desperate to learn a lot more about Rayman Legends Retold, because going into this, we weren't quite sure why you would remake Rayman Legends, but now after seeing it, it's quite impressive. So I want to hear a bit more about your hands-on time and what you think of the game, having played it yourself.
Yeah, I'm fresh back from Summer Game Fest. I've been at home for about an hour, so I'm keen to get these impressions out while they're still fresh. Nintendo had a handful of games at Summer Game Fest, their first year that they were actually participating in the show, but they didn't bring anything of their own. They just kind of set up a space for third-party developers to show off what they have coming. Quick note for those of you that are listening to this the day it drops. We're recording this before the Direct. The Direct hasn't happened. We don't know what's happened in there yet. I bet it was cool. But we did play Rayman Legends, and I have to say, I was utterly blown away by this. I'm not the world's biggest Rayman guy, but I can appreciate it. I played Rayman Legends on the Wii U back in 2013. Use the touchscreen controls, which, by the way, sadly are not present in the Switch 2 version. They said there would be no touchscreen stuff on Switch 2. I remembered at least that much. But what really impressed me about Rayman Legends Retold is that, again, Ubisoft is doing some technical wizardry here. It is such a beautiful looking game. They confirmed to me that it outputs at 4K. It's upscaled from some other resolution that they would not specify. I'm guessing 1440p, 90% of Switch games at this point. But what's really impressive to me here in particular is the lighting. I kept challenging the developer that was on hand, and again, this was not like the whole team. It's one person who flew from France to the US to do this, and I told them that, this was really impressive lighting, and pressed them on whether or not it was ray tracing, and they initially insisted that it was global illumination only. And John, you and I went back and forth on this, and you showed me that they spoke to VGC, the team back in France spoke to them and confirmed that there was ray tracing, in fact, in the game. And I felt like there was, because when you get towards certain parts of the demo, you can see things happening, like purple lights going off in the distance and yellow lights, and you can see just the side of Rayman's face get lit up by these effects in a really, really impressive way. So once you showed me that article, I took that back to the developer that I had access to and just asked them, hey, can you confirm for me one way or the other? Because, you're telling me one thing and this article says something different. After a few hours, because he literally was like WhatsApping the team back in France, and he's like, sorry, they're all asleep, but I'll get an answer for you. And on my way home, he did shoot me a quick email to just confirm that, yes, the Switch 2 version of Rayman has ray tracing, and this is running at a rock solid 60 FPS. I got to play 2 levels in the demo. Both of them were gorgeous. One of them was the musical level themed around Black Betty, which was in the original, and I was like, even I remember this. This is so cool. And initially, I didn't think that going to 3D for this type of game would work out, but it turns out it just somehow, despite being very obviously 3D, it still has that feeling of being really gorgeous 2D art. It's very, very pretty in motion. It's really hard to overstate just how nice this game looks and how performant it is on top of that. I can't see a reason that I would want to get this on a platform other than the Switch 2, because it just feels completely uncompromised.
My first impression upon hearing about the remake was, this sounds like an insult to the original, because it was such gorgeous hand-drawn art. But I think it's the lighting that makes this biggest difference, just when you're running through, things dynamically changing, when fire blasts go past Rayman, you see them light up. It is really impressive. And there's very few ray tracing games on the Switch 2 right now, and 0 of them run at 60 frames per second. So pulling all that off is really impressive. Obviously, they've got the camera angle to work with, making it a bit more lenient. But regardless of that, you just get what looks like one of the most impressive games on the entire console, just from a technical perspective. And it's not just more Rayman Legends as well. There's new levels, new musical levels. There's those new on-rails dragon levels.
Yep.
There's voice acting and cutscenes. And then you also get Origins as well. So I even if I wasn't on board with a remake, I struggle to feel any like disappointment here. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, I'm somebody who isn't the strongest Rayman fan out there, and even I was just kind of sitting there like, wow, this is a game I have to get. I did get to play one of the on-rails dragon segments, and it was just loads of fun. Like, you have to charge up shots and break through barriers and dodge a lot of stuff. It's not just, you know, simple, easy stuff. Like, it'll test your ability to navigate 3D spaces and stuff. And it, again, especially in those levels that are built for this, the ray trace lighting comes off so nicely, because every fire blast, every single shot towards you, like, you can see it illuminate you as it passes, and it does so accurately in a way that you don't traditionally see, particularly on a Nintendo platform. And it just never broke that 60 FPS the entire time I was playing. I played it in both handheld and docked mode. They let me go through the demo twice, and I just was flabbergasted by how nice this looks. I mean, even, you know, some Switch games work really well on the small screen because it can hide some imperfections, but this is one where you can play it on a 65-inch TV and still just be in awe of how gorgeous it looks. I'm just dumbfounded by what Ubisoft managed to pull off here. It is truly impressive stuff, and of all the games I saw at Summer Game Fest, outside of Nintendo even, from a technical perspective, this was the most impressive.
And the dragon levels sound like a really natural extension of the on-rails mosquito levels from Rayman 1 and Origins as well. It's just that in 3D pretty much. So that's really, really cool to see them sort of bring that back in a new way. And hopefully, I don't like saying this, but hopefully it leads to more Rayman in the future. Like, hopefully this is just like a test bed, and they're getting all these 3D assets together for something, you know, even bigger. But man, what a really, really cool game. But what game do you want to talk about next, Steve?
Boy, you know, there's one I wish I could talk about. Let's see. As far as the games that I saw, because there were 9 at the booth, but let's take a minute and talk about Out of Words, because I think this is one of the most unique games I've seen in a while. For those of you that maybe didn't catch the trailers or anything like that, this is a fully stop-motion animated game. It's actual puppets. In fact, the developers had 2 of the puppets that were made in Denmark brought out to Summer Game Fest for me to look at. I got to actually like hold one of them, which was really neat, because, you know, it was like this little plant creature, and, you know, immediately after I put it down, I played the demo and I saw that same puppet just animating across the screen. This is another one. Unfortunately, they weren't able to provide me like technical specifications for what resolution it runs at or anything, but it had this kind of feeling that was evocative of how like mixtape is presented, where it's a very unique art style and a very cinematic presentation, and one that is just something you don't traditionally see on consoles. Like, there's no UI, there's no HUD. It's just, you know, straight up a 2-player co-op game. The premise of it is that a boy and a girl are about to be separated. Their parent, you know, one of them is moving away, and they're both like school-age kids, and there's clearly some feelings involved there, but they can't muster the courage to tell each other how they feel. And so, you know, through a series of magical events, they lose their mouths, and they are turned into puppets, and they're forced to work together without speaking to one another. And they're on a quest to, you know, regain their ability to speak and mend their relationship in the process. So just a really cool idea for it, but the artistry here is what really got me. There's some cool ideas, like there's a very Super Mario Galaxy-like gravity mechanic in which you can jump and run across little planetoids and you know, jump up and down through areas that kind of have gravity-defying platforming mechanics. You get chased by monsters. There's a portion in the game where you have to throw a little creature called an Aleph between the two of you, and you're just traversing a chasm because whoever's holding it is not beholden by the rules of gravity, so they float up slowly while the other person descends, and you have to, you know, make sure you're tossing it between each other so you can keep moving without really falling. It was just a really clever game. It reminded me of like It Takes Two in a certain way, and I really enjoyed what I saw there. A lot of people, this was a hard demo to get to. Like every time I went to go play it, there were people on it, and I actually had to ask Nintendo if they could have me back after my appointment, because it took me till the final day to get an opportunity to sit down with it, and it was absolutely worth the wait.
It's rare that you get a game that looks as pretty as this, that has, you know, the gameplay chops to also back it up. But this seems to have a lot of really, really great ideas. I don't think I've actually seen this running on the Switch 2 yet either, so that's a new one for me to see footage of.
Yeah, really, really pretty. It's just, again, striking. It looks like it's running in 4K. It's really impossible to tell, especially in a show setting. This was one that they did not let us play handheld mode, but I think that made sense because, again, it's a 2-player co-op game.
Exactly.
They said they want to have game share working, but they're not certain yet. Like, it's so early on still that they're not 100% on what the final feature set will be. They said they hope to implement game share so you can play it with one copy of the game, but at that point in time, they said that they had literally just put that Switch 2 demo together, and considering that they had only recently done it, it ran exceptionally well.
Awesome stuff. Well, what else do you want to talk about here, Steve?
Are you ready for a game I didn't like?
Oh, yeah, go on, yeah.
I feel like we've talked
tell
about
me what you
some
didn't
good
like.
ones. I feel bad saying this, but I was not a fan of Turok. I had the chance to play Turok Origins, and it just... this one, I believe, is made by Saber Interactive, the guys who did the Witcher 3 port, and like that weird NBA game a while back. But at its core, it feels a bit like Turok. Like you can, you're hunting dinosaurs. You have a bow and arrow. They have these different loadouts now, so you can change what type of weapons you have. But I tried most of them, and the through line for me, first off, let's just say this. Turok runs at 30 FPS on Switch 2. And that for me is really tough to swallow with a shooter, because a shooter demands reflexes. It's a twitchy type of game, and it just felt a bit slow, a bit plodding, like clunky to me. But on top of that, and I'd say this is a larger sin as far as I'm concerned, is that the guns just didn't feel good. They didn't feel like you were dealing damage. It felt like you were just kind of hitting, and then eventually an enemy would like explode in a tidal wave of blood, which I get, gore and Turok are definitely, they go hand in hand. But in particular, one gun that turned me off was there was this laser beam. It was like an electric laser beam, and I was just firing it at enemies, and I never really got the sense that they were being hurt, and then they just explode. There was no feedback. There was no vibration in the controller. There was no hit stun or hit stop. Just kind of, you felt like these guns weren't doing anything, and then suddenly enemies would die. And it just felt unsatisfying. And, I think a lot of players picked up on that because every time I walked by the booth for Turok, there was nobody there. And I felt really bad because the developers were really excited for it, but even they were kind of like, maybe it's better on PlayStation. It's 60 FPS over there. It's a bit smoother. It runs a bit nicer. But I don't know that, it's going to save it just to double the frame rate. It looks nice enough. The graphics are nice enough. I just could not get into the gameplay hook at all.
I hope it does land by release, but these are all the things I was worrying about when we saw it for the very first time. When I think Turok, I think, highly curated levels that you can kind of get lost in and just take down like massive dinosaurs. But they had a lot of class stuff. They had a lot of very very modern shooter elements that I don't really associate with Turok. And I had a bad feeling from the start, to be honest.
Yeah, I my main touch point with Turok, and I think it's going to be true for a lot of people, was the original N64 game, where you were just Turok, the dinosaur hunter, the one guy, and it felt more like a classic 90s era shooter where you'd collect weapons that would get progressively crazier as time went on, that were bigger and more explosive and more destructive. And it just doesn't feel quite the same. It feels like you're just picking a generic character, and you're taking a generic loadout with you, and you don't really feel any attachment to who you're playing as, because it's just meant to be like a squad-based first-person shooter. And that's just, to me, that's not what Turok is about. That feels like a different game with a different inspiration that then had Turok added to it, because they're like, you know what? This is a name that people recognize and it will move copies. It just doesn't feel like what I expect from the franchise.
But let's talk about Among Us stories. This caught everyone off guard, and it's cool seeing Among Us sort of go into a different kind of approach to gameplay while still very much keeping the core of what it's all about. But I've not seen any hands-on gameplay, so this is my world premiere from you as well.
Okay, I can do world premieres. Among Us Stories actually was a highlight for me, and I did not expect it to be because I am not the world's biggest like Among Us fan. I've played it a handful of times, and I've certainly had fun with it, but it's just, to me, there's a lot of effort involved in getting a group together and getting on voice chat to really get the proper experience, especially on Switch, where we didn't have voice chat until last year. So it was just a bit more difficult than I felt like it needed to be to enjoy Among Us, particularly as a Nintendo fan. This is a single player experience, so you just for those of you that may not know or you didn't see the trailer for it, you jump into a VR and you're playing as like a security guard. You're assigned the role of security guard and you're trying to figure out murder mysteries. So our demo was pretty short. It was like a 15-minute that just gives you a taste for what the game will be like. And I do have good news for those of you that want to try it. The developers did confirm that there will be a demo for this on the 15th on Steam. So if you want to check it out, easy enough. And this game will run on anything. So if you have a Steam Deck or anything, you can try it there. But basically, it's like you're playing through Among Us, but it's got a narrative structure to it. So, you encounter a dead body, and then you have to convince your crewmates that you are not the imposter because they all believe you to be. And they actually, at the very beginning of the demo, just try to shove you out the airlock. And so, and they succeed. And then you get, you get sent back by the person running the VR, and they're like, hey, maybe you can do some stuff differently and not get shoved out the airlock. So you get to explore the inside of the vents and actually go through them and find clues. And you have to, one of my favorite things was that there's still like menial tasks that can be a little bit time consuming and difficult. Like right at the start, you have to swipe a card to open a door, and it's actually annoyingly difficult to do because you just have to get like the timing on L and R perfect. Once you learn it, it's fine, but like it took me 20 tries the first time. Or to find your way into certain areas of the ship, you'll need to talk to other crew members to maybe help you. Like the engineer, for instance, taught me how to get to medbay, like gave me the path to it. But to get him to share that knowledge with me because he believed me to be the imposter, I essentially had to like lock him in a room and spill coffee on his controls to summon him to fix them. And then when he realized he couldn't escape and that I had not killed him, he believed me finally. And then he was like, I'll help you get to medbay. You're on your own from there. And so as you go through, though, the detective persona that you've kind of taken on in this VR world will speak on your behalf. And so there's some pretty funny dialogue where like he says some kind of dorky film noir stuff and then is like, sorry, the VR is just programmed to say that. That's not me. I don't want to talk like that. It's just making me do it. So I think there's some really clever writing. It's really fun. And I'm really excited to actually play more of this. The demo was a bit too short to get a strong feeling for what the full game will be like. But I encourage everybody out there on the 15th, if you can go get the demo, try it for yourself, because I feel like this is a game that is better experienced through playing it than from someone like me just kind of talking you through the demo.
Well, it's all sounding pretty good, though. But let's dive into, let's go with Order of the Sinking Star by Jonathan Blow.
This was a really interesting one. It has major like 90s PC puzzle game vibes to it. So Order of the Sinking Star is like an isometric grid-based puzzle RPG. Like it's almost interesting to just like, it's almost reductive or a misnomer in a way to call it an RPG, because it is a full-on puzzle game. Like you go in and every level has like a different mechanic to it. So basically there's an overworld, and from that overworld you can enter various different puzzle levels, and they have, each one seems to introduce like a different mechanic. For instance, in one, there were mirrors that would teleport you, and you had to use those mirrors to traverse areas that you would just die if you walked over. You can't walk on water. If you go on water, you'll just sink and die, stuff like that. In another series of levels, you had to push blocks, but you could only push like one at a time. It's very like run-of-the-mill puzzle stuff, but it feels like a game that should have been published like 30 years ago somehow. And in that way, it's kind of neat. Like visually, it's not super impressive. Mechanically, it doesn't do anything that you probably haven't seen in other games. but it's a combination of really impressive, really clever puzzles that for certain people is going to hit really hard, but I think it's going to be one of those games that has like an incredibly small but dedicated fan base.
It's an interesting approach from Jonathan Blow, because like Braid and The Witness were both like very influential games for the indie scene. And then you get one which seemingly is kind of run-of-the-mill, but I don't know, maybe there's a bit more to this, but it definitely doesn't seem to hit the same levels as his previous works.
Yeah, it definitely is not going to be... And I don't mean this as a knock, it's just not going to be regarded the same way as those previous titles. This is certainly an interesting game, but it's something very different to his previous works. So I just don't think you're going to you're going to really find... You know, if you're a fan of his previous games, I don't think that necessarily means you're gonna vibe with this. I think it's gonna be something that becomes like something of a cult classic, but like with I don't think it'll ever escape into the mainstream. Let me put it that way.
Well, what game do you feel about talking about next, Steve?
You know, I want to talk about a game that I'm really mixed on, and that's Armatus. I usually ask for pronunciation guides for these games. It's Armatus, however you want to say it. that. And this is like a roguelike third-person shooter. And I have to say, I really, really dig the gameplay loop in this game. You know, it's by the same guys who did, I believe, Godfall, which admittedly is a game that I did not play. Not for any reason, it's just one that escaped me and never caught my attention fully. But this one, they basically said they wanted to take the combat of Godfall and translate it to a third-person shooter. And it is a very like fast-paced, high-octane kind of shooting game. And the unlike Turok, the act of shooting and combat in this game is addictive and fun. You have like a dash, a very high jump. You can gain abilities as you go through, augments to your guns, additional spells and abilities, so you can like shoot fire or paralyze your enemies or have daggers that shoot out in all directions when you kill someone. You know, your standard list of like roguelite type effects. And what really stuck with me was that every single demo at Nintendo's booth at Summer Game Fest was 20 minutes. And this was a game where I picked up the controller and it felt like I blinked and then 20 minutes were over. And to me, that's really good. You know, it was incredibly addictive. I wanted to keep playing it. And the developers were, you know, they said I got to like right near the end of the demo, which really just pissed me off because I was like, oh, if I had 30 more seconds, I could have ended it. But conversely, you know, all I've been saying is positive stuff. The point where I'm mixed is that on Switch 2, at least, the performance is frankly quite poor. This game had, you know, I couldn't even call them frame drops. It had like full on like mini freezes at points. You know, like I would kill the last enemy in an area and suddenly the game would like stop for like a half second and then go again. And it was clear that it was maybe like streaming in the next area or something, because when you would finish an area, a portal would open and to be fair, when you would go through that portal, it was like you were immediately into the next place. But I don't think they've quite figured out how to mask that loading completely, because you could see that, but also at times where there were loads of enemies on screen or lots of effects, you could see the frame rate visibly drop, like noticeably. It seems to target 60, but it seems to be one of these games where there's an unlocked frame rate and the optimization piece just isn't there yet. Hopefully they can iron that out by launch, because I think they have a really great gameplay loop that's really highly addictive. But visually and performance-wise, it feels like you could do a lot more with the Switch 2 hardware, especially, you know, when I'm playing Rayman at 60 FPS with ray tracing. I feel like you could definitely get this game up too.
They've got until winter to figure it out, but it's pretty cool to have a roguelike like this, which, you know, just goes for really pushing visuals. Because on the first Switch, the vast majority of roguelikes are like smaller 2D games. So to get something like a bit closer to a game like Returnal on a handheld, that's really appealing. Yeah,
if they get this fully optimized and it runs at a consistent... I would honestly, as much as I don't want it to run at 30, if I could get a consistent 30 or better yet, a consistent 60. I could see myself putting a lot of time into this, doing a lot of runs in it. The combat is just incredibly gratifying. So I hope they get those issues sorted out, because this will be a really nice game to add to the Switch library if they manage to do that.
Well, we've only got a couple more games to talk about. Let's go with Demi and the Fractured Dream.
Demi and the Fractured Dream was a surprise to me. I didn't know anything about it going in, and I picked it up, and it is very much like the evolution of 3D Zelda in a way. It feels like it borrows a lot from 3D Zelda, while adding in some elements of like character action games like Devil May Cry or something. For instance, you can do a double jump, you can do mid-air combat, you have a sword and a bow and arrow, lots of stuff, something that is suspiciously like a Korok leaf in your inventory. It's very clear where they drew their inspiration from, and the combat system is really nice considering this is a smaller game, but it does invite comparisons to Zelda that aren't always becoming for it, because obviously, some things I noticed were physics are a bit wonky in this game. Like when you swing that leaf, it feels like your character can do it 100 times a second, and it doesn't have that weight to it, even though it's very clearly meant for the same purpose as when Link uses a Korok leaf. Sword swinging in combat just feels a bit floaty, like a bit floatier than it should. Like sword strikes don't really feel like they land, but it's not terrible. I want to be clear about that. Like, I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying it doesn't compare favorably to Zelda, which for me Zelda is one of the best franchises.
It's a high bar.
Yeah, that's a high bar to clear. So if you're going in expecting this is going to play like Breath of the Wild or even Ocarina of Time, you're going to be met with disappointment. But if you can clear your mind of those notions and just play the game the way it's intended, you're going to have a lot of fun. Like, I would say traversal in Demi feels way better than Zelda, because you can run and double jump and flip through the air, and you've got kind of this more capable protagonist in that sense. Like, Demi is a lot more agile than Link ever has been. You can jump up in the air and repeatedly slash enemies, which of course Link is incapable of doing. So there are differences there, and you can find some real fun in those differences. But if you're going in expecting just a straight Zelda clone, you're probably going to be turned off. But I liked what I played. I'm very interested in playing more. Unfortunately, this was another demo that was like 10 minutes and you're done. Like, you go through this one dungeon, you fight a boss, and it's over. And that dungeon is like 3 rooms long, because they don't put you at the start of the dungeon. They put you like halfway through. And so it just doesn't take long to get through the demo of this game.
You definitely look at it and say, like, someone clearly loved Wind Waker, especially with like the Deku Leaf mechanics.
Yeah.
But there's also a bit of Journey in there as well from some of the art style, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's got a unique art style. It definitely draws on those cel-shaded games that we all know and love. And I think that visually it was really impressive. Frame rate wise and technical performance wise, it performed great, looked nice doing it. I definitely think that this is one of those games that I think will do very well on the eShop when it comes out. I think it'll be one of those that people suggest, like the same way I played It'll Do 2 when the Switch came out. I'll probably pick this up and have it fill a Zelda-shaped hole in my heart for a little while.
Well, only 2 games left, I believe. So let's go with My Time at Evershine.
Ooh, My Time at Evershine is capital R rough. I feel bad saying this because I never like to talk down about a game. And so I'll start with the positives. The demo was combat focused, and the combat is actually quite fun. You can pick between like a sword and shield or like a flaming greatsword. Combat is a new focus for the My Time at series in this case. And the devs were very keen to show us like how the combat systems work, and basically they took us through a dungeon. They were saying that dungeons are a new feature in the My Time series, and that they're really, trying to give people more to do outside of like the traditional farming and life sim elements that exist in the other entries in the series. And I genuinely enjoyed that part. The dungeon had clever puzzles in it. It had like a part where you had to get these 2 potions, and one was like a growth potion and one was a potion that killed plants. So you had to play with making certain areas have plants grow so that you could use them for platforming, and then certain areas you had to kill plants that were blocking doorways or blocking your progress. And at the end of it, there was a giant boss to fight. That was a lot of fun. The big problem is that, again, this was a game that ran extremely poorly. I'm talking maybe FPS in the teens. It was very rough, to the point that combat was difficult because frames were dropping so consistently that you would miss an attack, or it wouldn't read an attack input, or you would miss a dodge and you'd take damage because the game was just kind of all over the place performance-wise. Visually, it looked okay. Like it still looked very early, and maybe the developers can iron this out, but as it stands, the performance issues just really, really get in the way of having a good time with this one.
I had a feeling, but again, hopefully they can fix this stuff by launch, but it does look a little bit rough, yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because this one has potential. I think it has potential to be a lot of fun. It's just it needs to be in a much better place performance-wise before I could recommend it.
Yeah, and it is a lot more ambitious than the previous My Time at games, so it has that going for it. But yeah, hopefully there's a lot more they can do to remedy this. But let's hopefully end on something a bit more enlightening with Trine 6.
Trine 6 was good. So this is a good high note to end on. If you've never played a Trine game, again, my first touch point with Trine was on the Wii U with Trine 3. The whole idea of Trine is that you have 3 heroes, right? And I will be totally honest and cop to the fact that I can't remember their names other than Pontius right now. But Trine 6 introduces 2 more heroes, and part of the story of that is figuring out why there's now 5 people. Like there's supposed to be a limit of 3. Everyone is deeply confused. The 2 new characters want nothing to do with the crazy business that the heroes from the previous 5 entries get up to. They just want out. But their dad is wrapped up in this somehow, so they're on a quest to figure all these things out. Our demo basically included like a couple platforming levels, and one of the new things that they're introducing in 6 is that certain levels will be focused around one character's ability. So like the level that we played was focused on Pontius's shield. So you had to use his shield, and you could use it as any character while you were in this level to reflect lightning orbs like around the map. And the whole map, the floor was water. So if any of those lightning orbs hit the water, you died. And it was basically just a co-op puzzle solving light combat experience, very similar to other games in the series. Visually quite impressive, looks really, really nice, plays really well on Switch 2, perfect performance, no frame drops anywhere to be seen, drop in, drop out local co-op, which was really nice. I really have no complaints here. Like, I'm actually really excited to pick this one up when it comes out. I was able to play it with a couple people at the show, so it was, instead of just me and a developer, like we had 2 other people, so we were able to play like in a group of 3, and honestly we had a blast. Like it was a lot of fun. They had, in particular, one portion of the level was a bunch of water blocks, and you could do what they call a swim dash by pushing the B button, which would make you jump out of them like Echo the Dolphin, and you had to navigate those by having 2 members of your party go into specific blocks that had lights that would remove obstacles from your path, and then you had to jump into the central block around obstacles. It required a lot of coordination from everybody who was playing, and it was just loads of fun. I honestly really liked this one. It's up there. Like in terms of the games I saw at Nintendo's booth specifically, I'd say this is in my top 3. Like one of my favorites that they had at the show.
I've been out of touch with Trine ever since Trine 3, so I was a bit like, there's 6 of them now, but it feels like a good place to come back in after all this time.
Yeah, the developers specifically said that they're aware that a lot of people have kind of dropped in and out of the series over the years, and that they've designed Trine 6 to be a good place to get back into it if you've been away for a while, which is true for me too. 3 was the last time I really played one, so they said that 6 is designed to just, not be too intimidating for people who have dropped off.
Well, that's a whole bunch of Switch 2 games that you got to try, Steve. A little bit of a mixed bag, but there's some really cool things in there, though. And a lot of those sound like must-haves, especially things like Rayman and Among Us and a few other ones in there. But we have a lot more Nintendo Direct coverage and SGF coverage coming up on the channel, so please stay tuned for all that stuff. There's plenty to watch already as well, so just click around on GVG, and we really appreciate you watching. But until next time, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. That Ocarina of Time remake was cool if it happened.